Florence, a city of whispers and shadows where shimmering silk met cold steel. The Medici family, bankers with an iron grip on power, built their empire not just with florins and cunning deals, but with the sweat and blood of men who fought for coin. They were the mercenary captains, the condottieri, the rock stars of Renaissance warfare. These weren't just soldiers, they were warlords, strategists, brutal artists of battle. Their loyalty was bought, their blades were sharp, and their stories are wilder than any tale you have ever heard. These are the 6 most powerful mercenary captains the Medici ever hired, men who shaped an era with their swords. Number 1, Niccolò Mauruzi da Tolentino. The year is 1440. The fields near Anghiari hummed with a tension you could feel in your bones. Dust motes danced in the summer sun, catching the gleam of polished armor. On one side, the Milanese army, a formidable force, led by the legendary Niccolò Piccinino, marched with a single goal crush Florence. On the other, the Florentine forces, bolstered by Venetian allies, waited. Their commander, an aging but shrewd warrior, was Niccolò Mauruzi da Tolentino. Niccolò was no young hothead. He had seen countless battles, his face etched with the grim lessons of a lifetime spent in war. Born in the March of Ancona, he had climbed the ranks from a humble background to become one of Italy's most respected captains. His reputation for cunning and for striking at the right moment was well earned. Florence, under the guiding hand of Cosimo de' Medici, had paid handsomely for his services. They knew that their city's fate, their family's future, rested on the shoulders of this man. The battle itself began almost by accident. A Milanese vanguard, eager to seize a key bridge, stumbled upon the Florentine camp. While many soldiers were still eating, chaos erupted. Niccolò, ever vigilant, barked orders, his voice cutting through the din. He rallied his men with a calm authority that belied the sudden surprise. The bridge became a choke point, a meat grinder of steel and screams. The fighting was fierce, a brutal back and forth that stretched for hours. Niccolò watched from a small rise, his eyes scanning the entire battlefield, seeing the ebb and flow, the weak points, the opportunities. He sent his best cavalry units in flanking maneuvers, their horses thundering across the plain, hooves kicking up clouds of dust. He used his archers to rain down arrows, forcing the enemy to fall back. He knew the importance of position, of striking where it hurt most. The Milanese under Piccinino were formidable, but Niccolò was thinking several moves ahead. As the day wore on, exhaustion began to set in. Men on both sides fought with a desperate fury. Swords clanged against armor, spears found their marks, and the ground became slick with mud and blood. Niccolò, despite his age, remained at the heart of the action, his presence inspiring confidence in his soldiers. He was not just a tactician, he was a leader, a man who shared the dangers with his troops. The sun began to dip low, casting long shadows across the valley. The battle had lasted for an entire day, a grinding, brutal affair. Yet, surprisingly for a large Renaissance battle, the death toll was remarkably low. Condottieri battles often focused on capturing enemy soldiers for ransom, rather than wholesale slaughter. Still, the impact was profound. The Milanese forces, battered and demoralized, began to break formation. Piccinino, seeing his army falter, gave the order to retreat. Niccolò Mauruzi da Tolentino had won. The Battle of Anghiari was a decisive victory for Florence, cementing its position in central Italy and largely preventing Milanese expansion into Tuscany. Cosimo de' Medici, who had staked so much on this battle and on Niccolò's leadership, breathed a sigh of relief. The victory was a huge boon to the Medici family's prestige and power. Niccolò was hailed as a hero. Florence showered him with honors and gifts, a testament to his crucial role in saving the Republic. His service to Florence continued for some time after Anghiari. He was a trusted military advisor, a man whose counsel Cosimo de' Medici valued deeply. He understood the complex political landscape of Italy, where alliances shifted like Desert sands and betrayal lurked around every corner. And Niccolò navigated this world with a shrewd mind, always prioritizing the interests of his employer, Florence. The life of a condottiero was never truly safe, even in times of peace. They lived by their swords, and their reputations were their most valuable currency. Niccolò, despite his successes, knew this. He had made powerful enemies throughout his career, and the political currents of Italy were always treacherous. He passed away a few years after Anghiari, his death marking the end of an era for Florentine military power. He left behind a legacy of brilliant command and unwavering loyalty to the Medici cause, a true master of the battlefield who ensured Florence's survival against overwhelming odds. His name was etched into the annals of Florentine history, a silent guardian of the city's golden age. Number 2, Bartolomeo di Alviano. He was a force of nature, a mountain of a man with a booming laugh and an unshakable belief in his own destiny. Bartolomeo d'Alviano, born into a noble family in Umbria, was a condottiero of a different mold. He was not just a commander, he was an innovator, a man who saw the future of warfare while others clung to old traditions. His career spanned the late 15th and early 16th centuries, a time of massive upheaval in Italy as foreign powers, especially France and Spain, began to assert their dominance. The Medici, ever adapting, needed men like Bartolomeo. Bartolomeo served many masters throughout his tumultuous life. He fought for the Orsini, for the Borgia, for Venice, and for Florence, often switching sides as opportunities or necessities arose. His loyalty, like that of many condottieri, was primarily to his contract and his own ambition. But when he was in Florence's service, he gave his all. The Medici, particularly Lorenzo the Magnificent, and later his son, Pope Leo X, understood the value of a man who could command armies and reshape battlefields. One instance of Bartolomeo's significant involvement with Florentine interests came during the tumultuous years of the early 16th century, specifically around the time of the Holy League Wars. Florence, under the restored Medici, often found itself caught between the great European powers. In 1512, the Medici were restored to power in Florence after years of exile, largely through the efforts of Pope Julius II and his Holy League. Bartolomeo, a seasoned commander by this point, was involved in the military maneuvers that directly impacted Florence. He was a master of siege warfare, understanding how to break walls and how to defend them. He was also an early adopter of gunpowder weapons, seeing their destructive potential long before many of his contemporaries. He understood that heavy artillery could shatter old fortresses, and that musket fire could devastate cavalry charges. He trained his men in these new tactics, forging them into a highly effective fighting force. Bartolomeo's story is intertwined with that of the Medici through several key military campaigns where their interests converged. While he spent much of his later career fighting for Venice against the Holy Roman Empire in France, there were critical periods where his military might was aligned with the Medici's political agenda in Italy. His campaigns in the Romagna, for example, had a direct bearing on Florentine security and the stability of the Papal States, which were often governed by Medici popes. One of his most famous and tragic battles was Agnadello in 1509, where he commanded the Venetian forces against the League of Cambrai, which included forces allied with the papacy and thus, indirectly, with Medici interests. Despite a valiant fight, he was decisively defeated and captured. This event highlighted the brutal realities of the new era of warfare, where the old condottiero system was increasingly challenged by larger, state-funded armies. After his capture and eventual release, Bartolomeo continued to serve. He never lost his fighting spirit or his imposing presence. He was known for his grand gestures, his flamboyant armor, and his willingness to face any challenge head-on. He was a man who lived and breathed war, finding purpose in the clash of steel and the roar of cannons. His strategic brilliance was often praised even by his enemies. He could read a battlefield like an open book, predicting enemy movements and countering them with swift, decisive actions. He was known for his innovative use of terrain, turning natural obstacles into tactical advantages. His soldiers adored him, drawn to his charismatic leadership and his personal bravery. He never asked his men to do anything he wasn't willing to do himself. Bartolomeo d'Alviano died in 1515 during a campaign in Lombardy. He was preparing to lead an army for France against the combined forces of Spain and the Holy Roman Empire, a testament to his continued relevance in European power politics. His death marked the passing of a truly great condottiero, a man who bridged the gap between the traditional Italian mercenary captains and the emerging era of national armies. The Medici, even when not directly employing him, observed his career with keen interest, understanding that men like Bartolomeo shaped the very future of Italy. His powerful personality and his military genius left an indelible mark on the turbulent landscape of Renaissance Italy, a legacy built on daring maneuvers and thunderous victories. Number 3. Paolo Vitelli. In the late 15th century, as the whispers of foreign invasion grew louder across Italy, the Florentine Republic, guided by the Medici, found itself in desperate need of a strong military hand. They turned to Paolo Vitelli, a condottiero from a proud and powerful family of warriors from Città di Castello. The Vitelli had a fearsome reputation for their fighting prowess and their ambition. Paolo was no exception. He was a man of cold calculation and sharp tactical skill, often described as serious and unsmiling, with eyes that missed nothing. Paolo Vitelli's career was marked by both brilliant victories and deep suspicion. He had served various Italian states, building a reputation as a highly effective, if ruthless, commander. His services came at a high price, but the Medici and Florence were willing to pay. They needed a general who could protect their republic from the encroaching threats of France and other Italian rivals, especially Pisa, which Florence had long sought to control. Florence hired Paolo Vitelli in 1498 to lead their war against Pisa, a conflict that had dragged on for years and drained Florentine resources. The war was critical for Florence. Pisa controlled access to the sea, and regaining it was essential for Florence's economic and political health. Paolo immediately set about reorganizing the Florentine army, instilling discipline and introducing new strategies. He was methodical, meticulous, and demanded excellence from his troops. He quickly proved his worth. Paolo laid siege to Pisa, employing innovative tactics and relentless pressure. He captured key fortifications surrounding the city, tightening the noose around the rebellious Pisan Republic. His campaigns were marked by rapid movements and decisive actions, and it seemed as though Florence would finally achieve its long-cherished goal. His military successes brought relief and rising hope to the Medici and the Florentine government. However, as Paolo's star rose, so did the shadows of suspicion. Florence, a republic that prized its liberties, was always wary of powerful military leaders. That history of Italy was littered with examples of condottieri who turned against their employers, seizing power for themselves. Paolo Vitelli, with his strong army and growing influence, began to make the Florentine citizens, and even some within the Medici circle, nervous. Whispers began to circulate. Was he delaying the capture of Pisa intentionally? Was he negotiating with Pisa behind Florence's back? Was he harboring ambitions to become the master of Florence himself? These fears intensified in 1499 when Paolo, after capturing a crucial Pisan stronghold, failed to press his advantage and take the city itself. Explanations were offered, from illness to strategic difficulties, but the Florentine government, led by figures who had recently seen the Medici expelled and then return, was in no mood for excuses. They saw betrayal. They saw a threat. The Florentine government, particularly figures like Niccolò Machiavelli, who served as a diplomat and military observer during this period, watched Paolo with growing apprehension. Machiavelli, a keen observer of human nature and political power, would later write extensively on the dangers of relying on mercenary armies. The Paolo Vitelli story for Machiavelli became a stark example of those dangers. The decision was made. In July 1499, Paolo Vitelli was arrested while still in command of his army near Pisa. The arrest was sudden and shocking. He was transported back to Florence, imprisoned in the Bargello, the city's ancient fortress. The accusations against him were grave treason, conspiracy, deliberately undermining the war effort. The trial was swift, marked by accusations of torture to extract a confession. Whether he was truly guilty or merely a victim of Florentine paranoia will forever be debated. On August 10th, 1499, Paolo Vitelli, the brilliant condottiero who had seemed so close to delivering Pisa to Florence, was executed. He was publicly beheaded in the Piazza della Signoria, a stark warning to any who might harbor ambitions against the Republic. His death sent shockwaves through the condottiero community across Italy. It demonstrated the ruthlessness of Florentine politics and the precarious nature of a mercenary captain's life, even at the height of his power. The Medici, though not directly governing Florence at this exact moment, having been exiled in 1494 and returning in 1512, were deeply entangled in the political currents that led to Paolo's fate. Their eventual return would once again highlight the need for powerful military leaders, but also the constant need to control them. Paolo Vitelli's demise was a chilling reminder of the fine line between being a revered protector and a perceived threat in the cutthroat world of Renaissance Italy. His story serves as a tragic footnote in the turbulent history of Florence's struggle for dominance in Tuscany, a tale of ambition, suspicion, and the brutal consequences of a republic's fear. Number 4, Federico da Montefeltro. If you were looking for a true Renaissance prince, a warrior scholar, a man who personified both military might and refined culture, you would find him in Federico da Montefeltro, Duke of Urbino. He was a condottiero unlike any other, not just a leader of men in battle, but a patron of arts, a builder of libraries, and a master of diplomacy. His relationship with the Medici was complex, shifting between alliance and rivalry, but always marked by a deep mutual respect. Federico was born in 1422, the illegitimate son of Guidantonio da Montefeltro, the Count of Urbino. He rose through the ranks of the condottiero system, serving various Italian states, including Florence and the papacy. His military genius was widely recognized. He was known for his strategic brilliance, his meticulous planning, and his humane treatment of his soldiers, which earned him their fierce loyalty. Unlike many other condottieri, he avoided unnecessary bloodshed and often preferred to achieve victory through cunning maneuvers rather than direct, brutal assaults. His most striking feature was his profile. He had lost his right eye and a portion of his nose in a jousting accident. This injury, far from being a disability, became part of his unique and recognizable image. He famously had his portraits painted in profile, highlighting his distinctive appearance. Federico's relationship with Florence and the Medici was particularly significant during the latter half of the 15th century under the leadership of Lorenzo the Magnificent. While Federico sometimes found himself on opposing sides due to shifting alliances, he often served Florence as a trusted military commander or a valuable ally. Lorenzo de' Medici, ever the astute diplomat, understood the immense power that Federico commanded and sought to secure his friendship and his military expertise. One notable period of alliance came during the Pazzi conspiracy in 1478. This was a treacherous plot by the Pazzi family, supported by Pope Sixtus IV and the Kingdom of Naples, to overthrow Medici rule in Florence and assassinate Lorenzo and his brother Giuliano. While the plot was successful in murdering Giuliano, Lorenzo survived. Florence found itself isolated and under attack from Papal and Neapolitan forces. Federico da Montefeltro, despite being a vassal of the Pope, found himself in a difficult position. He was an honorable man, and he respected Lorenzo. Although he participated in some campaigns against Florence as part of the Papal forces, his actions were often measured. Critically, after the Pazzi conspiracy, when Florence was in dire straits, Lorenzo de' Medici went to Naples to negotiate a peace. During this period, Federico's subtle stance and the respect he commanded helped to temper the ambitions of Florence's enemies. His influence was felt even when he was not directly fighting for the Medici. Later, in 1480, when the Ottoman Turks landed in Otranto, threatening Italy, Federico again played a crucial role in the Italian League that formed to push back the invaders. Both Florence and the Medici were part of this league, and Federico's military leadership was vital in uniting the disparate Italian forces. This event highlighted the broader Italian context, where condottieri like Federico were essential for collective defense. Federico's Urbino court became a beacon of Renaissance culture. He built one of the finest libraries in Italy, commissioned magnificent artworks, and surrounded himself with scholars and artists. He exemplified the ideal of the universal man, capable of both wielding a sword and appreciating a sonnet. Lorenzo de' Medici, himself a renowned patron of the arts, deeply admired Federico's intellectual pursuits and his sophisticated court. They shared a common vision for the cultural flourishing of Italy, even as their political interests sometimes diverged. Federico was also an astute politician. He knew how to play the long game, how to balance alliances, and how to maintain his independence in a land dominated by powerful states. His military campaigns were often characterized by careful negotiation and psychological warfare, minimizing losses while maximizing strategic gains. He was a master of siegecraft, a skill that Florence frequently utilized in its various territorial disputes. Federico da Montefeltro passed away in 1482. His death was a significant loss for Italy. He had brought a unique blend of military prowess and intellectual refinement to the role of condottiero. He was not just a hired blade, he was a statesman, a visionary, and a cultural icon. The Medici, who had often relied on his tactical brilliance and his diplomatic influence, mourned his passing. His legacy endures as one of the most accomplished and celebrated figures of the Italian Renaissance, a man who demonstrated that even in the brutal world of warfare, honor, intellect, and culture could thrive. He was a pillar of stability and a master of both battle and books, a true condottiero prince. Number 5. Giovanni delle Bandinere. He was a whirlwind of raw power, a living embodiment of the late Renaissance's brutal beauty. Giovanni delle Bandinere, born Ludovico de' Medici, was a distant cousin of the main Medici line, but he was fiercely loyal to them, especially to Pope Leo X, the Medici pontiff. Giovanni was not just a mercenary, he was a Medici, a condottiero who brought the family's renowned ambition and ruthlessness to the battlefield. He was the Alas Condottiero, a tragic hero who bridged the gap between the age of personal armies and the coming era of state-controlled militaries. Born in 1498, Giovanni's early life was marked by a rebellious spirit and a thirst for adventure. He quickly distinguished himself as a fearless warrior, a natural leader of men. He gained his famous moniker, Dal Bandinere of the Black Bands, after his mentor, Pope Leo X, died. As a sign of mourning, Giovanni ordered his troops to wear black bands on their arms and banners. This striking image, combined with his legendary ferocity in battle, made him a figure of awe and dread across Italy. Giovanni was a master of cavalry tactics, favoring swift, aggressive maneuvers and devastating charges. He understood the importance of speed and surprise in an age where massive, slow-moving armies were becoming common. His black bands were a highly disciplined and effective fighting force, personally loyal to Giovanni. He led from the front, always in the thick of the fighting, inspiring his men with his sheer courage and disregard for his own safety. He was known for his quick temper, his bursts of rage, and his unwavering loyalty to those he considered his own. The Medici, particularly Pope Leo X, and later Cardinal Giulio de' Medici, who would become Pope Clement VII, relied heavily on Giovanni's military prowess to protect their interests in the Papal States and beyond. Giovanni was essentially their personal enforcer, their sword arm in a volatile Italy. He fought numerous campaigns for the papacy, often against unruly lords or invading foreign armies. One of his most significant periods of service came during the Italian wars of the early 16th century, a time when France, Spain, and the Holy Roman Empire were all vying for control of the wealthy Italian peninsula. Giovanni found himself constantly in action, fighting for the Papal States, which were intimately tied to Medici power. In 1526, Italy was plunged into the War of the League of Cognac. The League, formed by Pope Clement VII, the Medici Pope, France, Venice, Florence, and Milan, aimed to push back the growing power of the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, whose imperial armies were threatening Italian independence. Giovanni delle Bandiere, as the papacy's premier military commander, played a crucial role in this conflict. He led his black bands with his characteristic ferocity, harassing the imperial forces, disrupting their supply lines, and engaging them in sharp skirmishes. He was a master of guerrilla warfare, never allowing the larger imperial army to settle. His actions bought valuable time for the League, frustrating the imperial advance and protecting central Italy. However, Giovanni's relentless pursuit of the enemy came at a terrible cost. In November 1526, during a skirmish near Governolo, he was gravely wounded by an arquebus shot. The bullet shattered his leg, a devastating injury in an era before modern medicine. He was transported to Mantua, where he received medical attention, but his wound quickly became gangrenous. Despite the pain and the grim prognosis, Giovanni faced his end with the same stoicism he showed on the battlefield. He reportedly ordered his leg to be amputated, a procedure performed without anesthesia, biting down on a handkerchief to stifle his screams. He died a few days later on November 30th, 1526, at the age of just 28. His death was a devastating blow to the League of Cognac and a profound loss for the Medici. Giovanni delle Bandiere was their most reliable and formidable military asset. Without him, the League's military efforts faltered significantly. His death paved the way for the infamous sack of Rome in 1527 by the imperial forces, an event that profoundly humiliated Pope Clement VII and severely weakened Medici power. Giovanni delle Bandiere was a true warrior, a man whose life was defined by the sword. He embodied the fierce, aristocratic spirit of the condottiero, but his death marked the end of that era. He was one of the last great captains to command a personal army in a world increasingly dominated by larger professional state forces. His loyalty to the Medici, his explosive courage, and his tragic end cemented his legend as one of the most captivating and powerful figures of the Italian Renaissance. He was the Medici's wildcard, their unstoppable force, until fate finally caught up to him. Number 6. Francesco Sforza. Imagine a man who began life as the son of a condottiero and ended it as the Duke of Milan, one of Italy's most powerful states. That was Francesco Sforza, a towering figure of the 15th century whose destiny was deeply intertwined with the rise of the Medici in Florence. Francesco was not just a mercenary captain, he was a kingmaker, a cunning politician, and a military genius whose career spanned decades of brutal warfare and shifting alliances. Born in 1401, Francesco was the illegitimate son of Muzio Attendolo Sforza, another famous condottiero. Francesco inherited his father's military talent and ambition, quickly establishing himself as a formidable commander. He was known for his physical strength, his strategic mind, and his ability to inspire unwavering loyalty in his troops. He was pragmatic, adaptable, and understood that in the treacherous world of Italian politics, power was not just taken with a sword, but secured with shrewd alliances and calculated risks. His relationship with the Medici family, particularly Cosimo de' Medici, was one of the most crucial alliances of the 15th century. Cosimo, the de facto ruler of Florence, understood that his city's security and prosperity depended on a careful balancing act of power in Italy. Florence, unlike Milan or Venice, did not have a large standing army. It relied on condottieri like Francesco. Cosimo realized that supporting a powerful, reliable ally in Milan was far better than having a hostile one. The defining moment of Francesco Sforza's career and his deepest connection to the Medici came during the succession crisis in Milan after the death of the last Visconti Duke, Filippo Maria, in 1447. Francesco, who had married Filippo Maria's illegitimate daughter, Bianca Maria, believed he had a rightful claim to the duchy. However, Milan declared itself a republic, and Venice, Florence's rival, began to expand its territory into Milanese lands. Cosimo de' Medici made a monumental decision. Against the advice of many Florentine citizens and even some of his own allies, he decided to back Francesco Sforza's claim to Milan. This was a bold and controversial move. Florence had historically been allied with Venice against Milan. But Cosimo saw the long-term strategic advantage. A powerful, friendly Sforza in Milan would create a stable balance of power in northern Italy, protecting Florence from Venetian expansionism. Florence provided Francesco with crucial financial support and political backing. This was not a simple mercenary contract, it was a deep political and military alliance. Francesco, with Florentine money and diplomatic pressure, began his campaign to conquer Milan. He fought against Venice and the fledgling Ambrosian Republic of Milan, demonstrating his unparalleled military skill. He won key battles, outmaneuvering his opponents with brilliant tactics and relentless sieges. His army, fueled by Florentine funds, was a formidable force. His patience and cunning were evident in his siege of Milan itself, where he slowly starved the city into submission. On February 26, 1450, Francesco Sforza marched triumphantly into Milan, acclaimed as its new duke. This event dramatically reshaped the political map of Italy. The alliance between Cosimo de' Medici and Francesco Sforza became the cornerstone of the Italian League, a period of relative peace and stability in Italy that lasted for decades. This alliance, known as the Peace of Lodi in 1454, was largely orchestrated by Cosimo and Francesco, recognizing the need for a balance of power to prevent any single state from dominating the peninsula. As Duke of Milan, Francesco continued to be a crucial ally for the Medici. Their relationship was one of mutual respect and strategic necessity. Francesco provided military might and political stability in the north, while Florence offered financial power and diplomatic influence in central Italy. They worked together to counter threats from Venice, Naples, and the papacy. Francesco proved to be an effective and enlightened ruler of Milan. He patronized the arts, undertook ambitious building projects, and improved the city's infrastructure. He showed that a condottiero could transition from a warlord to a respected sovereign, a true Renaissance prince in his own right. His transformation from a mercenary captain to a duke was a testament to his incredible ambition, political acumen, and military genius. Francesco Sforza passed away in 1466, leaving behind a stable and powerful duchy for his son, Galeazzo Maria. His legacy was profound. He had not only founded a powerful dynasty, but had also played a pivotal role in establishing an era of peace in Italy, all thanks to his crucial alliance with the Medici family. His life story is a testament to how the shrewd employment of a powerful mercenary captain could shape the destiny of entire states, defining an era through the strength of a handshake and the power of a sword.